Yeah, it's not really disputable. There's not just a bias in the criminal justice system where women get less harsh punishments than men do for literally the same crime across the board. And this is also not just a phenomenon isolated to the United States. This is almost a global phenomenon. Everywhere I looked, this was the case. Which shows, again, the benevolent nature, by the way, of men and the way that we perceive women. But also, just in divorce alone, of course, it's skewed in favor of women. So, I mean, yeah, the entire criminal justice system is skewed against men and towards women for sure. If you're going to, I think it's more complex and you can't just break the dynamic down as simplistically as that. But if you're going to just kind of summarize it, yeah, there's definitely bias.
I can actually put this topic to rest because I just looked it up. Women are sent to jail 42% less than men, and they receive 25% shorter sentences.
Yeah, well, nobody's disputing that. It's the causation that I think we would dispute. So, again, I would kind of indicate and point back to virtues. And when we're talking about virtuous society, it's become kind of a standard that women aren't held responsible for their actions. They're kind of infantilized, and we treat them like they're infants who have no agency, and that's the incorrect way to go about doing things. So I think it's a virtue issue again. All of these things always seem to indicate or go back to societal engineering against virtue. So, for instance, if a man molests a 13-year-old girl, society views it as being heinous in comparison to when a 13-year-old boy is molested by the same aged female. Why is that? Well, it's power dynamics or some bullshit the left makes up, but it's not true. It's because of an elimination of virtue. We should be applying a virtuous standard to women as well, and we just don't. We just don't do it because men have lost their own virtuous standards.
I think it's interesting the way that you phrase this is like this has been something that's been lost, because it seems like, at least to my understanding, these biases in the court system have existed since like basically the court system itself, right? So oftentimes when you look at like these like hearings, or when you look at why did these women get sentenced less than men, like even from, let's go 1900s or even before that, the reasons are always like, well, that pretty lady or that little old lady, she can't really hurt anybody or she's not that much of a threat. And I think this is just this idea of like prevalent.
No,
and
that's an oversimplification. So
well, no, I
when
think
you're still
women
looking
are,
at when you're looking at.
Can I finish? I'm almost done. I think looking like throughout, our history and society, we have always seen women as like less threatening than men.
They are less threatening than men. That's why we look at it that way.
Okay. What do you think the court system is for?
In the United States, the court system is supposed to be about having blind justice, and it's supposed to be about justice. That's what it's supposed to be about.
It's supposed to be about justice, right? Yeah. So if you commit a bad action, right, and you are, hurting society, you should be held to that standard of like, okay, like, no, we have to bring you to justice.
It doesn't have to be a bad action necessarily for a court to interject for justice. So.
Okay, like an illegal, an illegal action, do you not think that like
doesn't even have to be an illegal action, but go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, because I guess the point that I'm trying to convey here is that I do think if you commit this like bad or illegal action, right, one that our society deems like unfit and unokay, then yes, you are a threat to society just as much as a man is, right? So you should be punished just as well. So when you're saying like, oh, women are less threatening than men, I don't necessarily agree with you, because I think there are certain situations.
There's nothing to dispute.
Okay, because earlier you were just like women are threatening than men, and I'm just like, okay, well, that's part of the problem. That's why people are being.
You're not listening. So
okay.
It is true that the reason that men overrepresent almost all violent crime in almost all sectors and always will is because we're literally engineered to be predators. We're engineered to be predatory. That's what we're biologically engineered to do. So, of course, the crime rates for men are going to be sky high in comparison to women. But what's happened is that, no, it has not been a historic standard that if women are found guilty of crimes, they were given a lesser punishment. We burned witches at the stake, right? We literally burned them at the stake. They weren't given a lesser punishment. When it came to infidelity, we executed them. They weren't given a lesser punishment. So this is not a historical apt thing that you're talking about. Even inside of justice systems, which are somewhat modern, which were modern European justice systems from the 1600s, we were still burning witches. So no, women were held to a higher standard when we were virtuous.
Stupid argument. Do you actually think that in the 1800s? Yes, it is.
This stuff.
Continue.
I can't.
To be fair, you're being kind of dismissive without addressing it, though.
Sure, I will address it as well. So, do you actually think that in the 1800s that they regarded, for example, like a woman assaulting another person and mugging them? Do you think that they treated that equal to a man, or do you think that they were probably likely to dismiss her as like a silly little woman?
I think that it wasn't something that was encountered often. So I can understand. So I can understand why the penalty differential would be there versus crimes that were encountered often by women, where the penalty differential was not set higher for men than women. They were burned at the stake, for instance,
yes,
like infidelity.
Women were assumed to be witches more often than men were, but you're just talking about a gender-specific type of crime.
Right. So are you. So are you. Mugging is a gender-specific type of crime.
I just asked you that.
Isn't that a gender-specific type of crime? Mugging. Yes or no?
No, men do it more often.
Then it's a gender-specific type of crime.
No.
Okay, but witch burning is a gender-specific type of crime, even though men who are witches also got burned. Even though men who are witches got burned, huh?
Yes,
this is big brain erudite here.
Hold on.
This is so fucking obvious because in the cases of witches, we all know now that literally nothing was happening. It was just mass paranoia that often resulted in women being killed. Whereas in the cases of mugging, the crimes were actually
First of all, that's historically illiterate. You don't know what you're talking about. It had most of the time the reason that people were burned as being witches is because midwives assisted in abortions. They assisted in abortions. That was what they were mostly being burned for. Now, there was some instances where there was mass hysteria when it came to certain trials and things like this. But if you had read my wife's book, Occult Feminism, you would actually know this because she goes over it in great detail.
Great historical book, top on the Amazon.
Well, I mean, it references actual historical books from documented scholars, but that's fine because it was written by her. It must be invalid, even though she references their work. Genius
Tom, I think we found your Halloween.
No one is saying that.
I just don't care about your wife's book as evidence for whether or not this is true.
I didn't offer her book as evidence. I offered the stuff in her book which references historic facts as evidence.
I can't. I feel like that's just like 2 steps away from just being able to shill your wife's book. Well done, sir.
I agree. By the way, I'm very proud of that. But now back to this, I do have to ask, how could you say that it's gender specific for witch burning when men were burned as witches, but it's not gender specific when it came to mugging? You're literally talking about just which gender does it more. How could that not be the case?
But didn't you bring up the example?
No, I want her to answer my question. How can that not be the case? How can that not be the case?
All right, buddy.
Of women, there wasn't a crime occurring. There was an assumption of crime against a specific individual, and it seems like society constantly wanted to pin that on women. In the case of mugging is a real crime that actually occurs. And so I'm trying to ask in the 1800s,
they're both real crimes. Witchcraft would be a real crime even if you don't think that it was real. It was still a real crime. What the hell are you talking about?
Wait, so do you believe witchcraft is a thing that can actually happen? Do you think
it doesn't matter? It was treated as a crime, whether they're actually doing something magical or not. Irrelevant.
Well, regardless, like in a sense, a crime was committed against these women that were burned at the stake as well. So still, that is a gender-specific crime, even by that standard.
What we're talking about is historically, was it the case that women were treated equal in the eyes of the law and viewed as just as likely to be perpetrators as men, and therefore treated equally under the law?
For the crimes that they were usually committing, yes.
No. So I'm asking you, in the 1800s, do you actually believe that if a woman committed a mugging, that she would have received the same level of sentencing and punishment as a man committing a mugging?
So I've already,
a man or woman would do it more often.
Okay, I'm going to answer your question as soon as you answer to me how this would not be a gender-specific crime under your criteria for witches versus mugging. You still haven't answered that.
That it's so inconsequential, and you don't want to go into the fact that.
Then just bite the bullet and say you misspoke. Just bite the bullet and say you misspoke instead of being arrogant, erudite.
I didn't misspoke.
Okay, well then explain it. Then explain how they're not gendered under the same criteria. It makes no sense.
Because in the case of witchcraft, there was no crime actually occurring. It was mostly people making
There was a
shit
crime
up.
occurring. Whether or not you think it was reality,
What
they
was
was
the
considered a
crime?
crime. What are you talking
What were
about?
they doing? What were they doing?
They were engaging in whatever was considered the practice of witchcraft.
No, the Salem witch trials was almost exclusively mass hysteria because one woman. Had
So
to-
what? It was still considered a crime?
magic
It was still
potions.
considered a crime. You can't evade that. I don't know what to tell you. You cannot evade it was considered a crime.
The question were these people actually committing that crime or not?
It
and
was
in mass.
gender.
Okay, don't you
It was
understand
not
what she's
that-
saying? She's saying, like, let's pretend that there was no such thing as stop signs, and people would cross the street and you would burn them for a stop sign that wasn't there. Who cares? It's still considered a crime.
Not a real crime,
Screech,
not
screech,
a
read,
farcical crime that is
read.
drummed up and fabricated. In the case of witchcraft, it is a farcical
How would that
crime
not
is
be
drummed
gender
up and
specific?
fabricated.
You still
And
haven't
they
answered
were
that.
mistrials. There were mistrials constantly because there was a lot of people motivated in this situation, for example, to find women guilty of this for some reason.
Yeah, you've already
I'm not
explained
sure-
that. But you haven't explained how that wouldn't be gender specific. It makes no sense.
Because it was
I mean, even
mostly
by our
women
modern
being found as witches.
standards, it's
That's
still
why.
a gendered crime because we're
Yeah, it makes no
these
sense.
Women that are getting tied to the
What are
stake
you
and burned, a
talking
crime
about?
is being committed against them, and there's still
There
like
was-
even by our modern standards, that'd still be a gendered crime.
It's like making
So
shit up
there
as she
were
goes to try to
mistrials.
cover it.
There was no due process in the cases of women who were found
Exactly,
with.
crimes
Yes,
against them.
there were some men, but most of the people who were burned at the stake for being witchcraft doers were women. Which is why
Right.
I'm outlining it as a gender-specific thing because it is a fabricated crime. In the case of mugging, it is not.
It's not fabricated. They were accused of a crime, and then they were murdered for the crime. Yes. How is the crime's not fabricated? Whether
Yes,
you think that they're guilty of actually doing it is a totally different thing. It was still considered a crime. It's still gender specific because if you're talking about the majority of it is X person does it, then that would be gender specific. What the fuck are you talking about? Are you retarded? Literally? I don't even know what you're talking about.
It's so funny that you will say these things unironically while you're literally.
It is
talking about
unironic.
mistrials and
Yes.
false accusations. You're basically being like. I
You
think
said
that was a
this.
crime.
You said it.
No.
I didn't say it. You said it.
I can't with this level of autism. I actually.
It's not
don't know.
autistic. You could have just walked it back and said I misspoke and it made no sense. You could have just done that.
I'm not saying that witchcraft wasn't in the law. I'm saying that the crime of witchcraft was typically fabricated because nothing was actually happening. At worst, it was like women tripping on mushrooms, and at most, like there was anything actually seriously happening, it was midwives using herbs to help women not die in birth. So what I'm saying is, you're missing all of the social cues here. So when I'm talking about a gender-specific thing, I'm talking about a situation, regardless of whether it's the law, that people fabricated, there were mistrials, and people made up shit to claim that women were witches.
How would that make it not gender specific, you lunatic? How?
She's saying that it makes it gender specific in the case of witchcraft.
Right. Well, if that's the case, then it would make
think
it
that's
gender
kinda what
specific in the
everybody's
terms of mugging. What are you
think
talking
mugging is
about?
a crime that like doesn't happen? Do you think mugging is like not a real crime? Like, is that what you think?
No.
No, but like
What
I
are you
think what he's
talking
saying
about?
is like,
Like,
people who did witchcraft.
what is the IQ
like,
of the
they,
people
like,
on this panel?
They practiced something, right? They practiced spells and all this bullshit.
but
There
what we're
was a-
saying is
there
that the
was
vast
a
majority
thing they
of
were
men-
doing.
None of this, because muggings are happening and witchcraft was not. That's
So
the
people
issue.
weren't like
It
people.
was a
Yes,
gender
what they
specific-
considered witchcraft was happening, and they did prosecute people for it.
women
What reality
being
do you live in?
scapegoated. Witchcraft is women being scapegoated under false accusations.
And men.
Muggings are not
And men.
being scapegoated.
And
no!
well,
hold
yeah,
on,
men
hold
could
on,
be
hold on.
scapegoated
Wait,
for
wait, wait.
muggings. What are you talking
Hold on.
about?
Hold on, wait. Hold on.
Wait.
Not so erudite.
Oh,
Do
this
you think that they were actually doing anything that would be considered witchcraft in these scenarios, or do you think they were just accusing them of witchcraft with absolutely no evidence?
There was tons of cases that have been unearthed where most of this was mistrials and it was absolutely fabricated based on things like one girl's testimony. The Salem witch trials is an excellent example of
That's only
mass
one
hysteria.
example of tons.
I-
The Malfarious Maleficarium, which is called, it's literally the document which talks about how you apply standards to witchcraft. The Malfarious Maleficarium, I'm not kidding. It's not a joke, and it was a crime, and it was gender specific, at least according to your standard. I don't know why you won't just concede the point.
There's nothing to concede to you.
Just double down on the stupidity. That's fine, I guess. I don't know what to say.